Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're here for the final match of today's Victory Road World Cup, sponsored by Elgato. And my name's Ben Kiriakou, joined here by Gabby Snyder. And we are very, very excited to be casting this final match of the day because it's an absolutely brilliant matchup between two of the best players really in the world today at the moment, coming out of the previous Players Cup, and a match that Gabby has already casted already, and we'll see if it's any different from the previous time. But Gabby, why don't you tell us a little bit more about these players and the matchup?
Yeah, so I had the absolute pleasure to cast over losers finals of the Players Cup 4 global final stage. And during that stage, we got to see Renzo Navarro face off against Fevzi Özkan. Renzo going on to win the tournament. And even though Players Cup 4 was in Series 9 and this tournament is in Series 10, I am so excited to see how this match is going to play out because it's very rare that you get to rematch against someone that you lost such a key match against this
Mm,
close to when that happened.
yeah.
So even though the outcome of this match doesn't necessarily impact the group stage of this tournament and who's going to be moving on in this tournament, I cannot wait to see these two trainers play because I'm sure it's going to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been in fortunate position to be playing in the European circuit for far too many years now. And Fevzi is always a player that I really enjoy spending time with at tournaments and really enjoy playing. We've played against each other in numerous occasions, numerous tournaments over the years. It's a little bit hit and miss. As to which of us has come out on top in each particular tournament. And of course, Renzo, a newer player to my experience, certainly not someone I've played in real life tournament, but was on the receiving end of quite a decisive game last week on the streamer against him. So these two players are players that have proved themselves time and again. Recently, a while ago, and it's almost a clash of the titans coming out as the last match of the weekend that we have for you. And why not save the best for last, Gabby?
Yeah, I almost want to call it a Players Cup light, but it looks like they were also in your group. So I have to wonder if you had the chance to play Fevzi when the UK matched up against Germany, that all the way back in week one. But it looks like you all are also moving on. So congratulations, because unfortunately for Germany, I don't think the outcome of this match again will really impact the final standings for Group B.
No, not quite. There was a little bit of calculation that went on today actually, between within our group, and the UK. If we are currently, I think 4-1 against Costa Rica, at the moment. So we've at least got a draw. If we got a draw and Costa Rica managed to clutch out the final games of this week, even if we win 2 games to nil, so they win all of the games, 2 games to nil. Germany doesn't have enough individual game wins, not match wins, game wins. If we are to tie and to Germany are to win all of the rest of their games against Peru and also draw, so we end up on the same amount of points. Oh, sorry, win their game against Peru, should I say? So yeah, unfortunately, a little bit of tiebreak mean that Germany aren't going to be going through, but we're still going to be able to have a great game with Fevzi repping it for Germany and being able to just go out in style, hopefully, in this matchup. So, without further ado, Gabby, I can't hold on any longer. I want to see. I want to keep on moving forward and get to this match.
I know, me too. But we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer because it is always really interesting to see just how the teams matched up overall in these team format tournaments. And even though Germany and Peru are apparently currently tied according to the website in terms of outcomes,
Mm.
I find it really interesting that there appears to be just a slight game advantage on Germany's side of the field, if I tallied that up correctly. So yeah, like you mentioned, this has all been really, really close. It's clear just based off these matchups that trainers must have really been bringing their end game because I don't really see many teams that would just automatically, have an advantageous win against the other one. Like these look like they were all very close games, and knowing that we're going to get two former Players Players Cup competitors playing at their finest for this final round of the week, you have to assume that it's going to be another incredible match.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, Gabby, really consistent teams. You've only got really Zacian and Calyrex Shadow there, with a couple of, the Groudon and Kyogre teams that we've seen a little bit of today interspersed between them. But and that Lunala just sitting on Peru's side as well. But all solid picks, all fairly in keeping. That's something that we experienced when the UK played both Germany and Peru, was that both teams really did stick to tried and tested pretty much exclusively, with those odd Pokemon choices, maybe those odd moveset choices, just to tech out for those team matchups that you expect to play against. But here we are, your first player of this match. Fevzi is going to be rocking that Groudon, Incineroar, Entei, Zapdos, Cherrim, and the Umbreon.
Groudon finally finding that partner that it wants to see in the form of Cherrim. I think that we've alluded to Cherrim a couple of times over the stream this weekend. Haven't really seen it come into play yet, so I'm very excited to see Flower Gift finally in the sunlight like it belongs. Also, what's really interesting to me is that this team reminds me a lot of the team that Wolf Glick ran for the Players Cup Invitational, which was, I believe, just 2 weekends ago. Does have a couple adjustments with the Umbreon over the Dusclops, which is something to keep in mind. Really, it's almost like Fevzi took the best of the Groudon team that we saw Naoto Mizubuchi win the most recent World Championship with, and mix it with this Series 10 Cherrim, probably a Choice Scarf Entei team, and take the best of both worlds. And especially when you're going up against a team like Renzo's team, which has the Calyrex Shadow on it, that Umbreon is going to come into such key play.
It is. And, one of the other Pokemon that really sticks out to me in this matchup is that Nihilego. Entei, as you mentioned before, tends to be holding the Choice Scarf in these sort of team compositions. Difficult when you're faced up against something like a Nihilego with all of that fake out support that Renzo has on his side of the field between the Mine Shell, the Incineroar, and the Rillaboom. You could always be protecting it potentially and being able to just launch out Meteor Beams and Power Gems and Sludge Bombs into Fevzi's side of the field. So that really sticks out to me, as well as the sort of tailwind opportunity that Renzo has with the Whimsicott, amongst, I'm sure, some other shenanigans that it has access to. But as we are going to be going into the game now, Gabby, what do you think about these team matchups?
I think it's very interesting. I don't think Fevzi is going to be surprised by Renzo's team here, as I believe 3 or 4 of the Pokemon brought on this team are identical to the team that he ran in the Players Cup Invitational. I think the key thing to focus on, though, is, how do we get Calyrex Shadow and Nihilego to be those primary attackers like you were calling out, Ben? And if you're on Fevzi's side of the field, what Pokemon do I have to sort of stop that support loop? Because it really is going to come down to a lot of this switching. Make sure you have fake out pressure. Make sure you get those Intimidates. The interesting thing for me to harken back to as we go through this first team preview of this matchup is that the game that Fevzi and Renzo played in losers finals for the global finals of Players Cup 4 also came down to a lot of this slow switch style of play, and I'm curious if either of them are going to respond and just assume that's what we're going to get from the get-go here, or if we're going to see, a slower game one where they really are just feeling each other out to see how each other is going to approach this matchup, and then have a couple of quicker games 2 and 3.
Yeah, one of the things that really stands out, I think, Gabby, is these teams are both look quite aggressive, both look like they want to be on the offensive, and certainly that's what Renzo's going for now. As is Fevzi, with a pretty explosive lead here. Nihilego and Whimsicott offering a bit of pressure onto that Entei Groudon lead, with maybe some stab attacks maybe a little bit of Meteor Beam, and maybe a bit of Tailwind coming out.
I think you have to set up Tailwind immediately turn 1 if you're Whimsicott, just given that the Entei most likely is holding a Choice Scarf, and a Sun boosted Sacred Fire is a really big attack to be afraid of. I also think that you have to be careful if you're in Renzo's shoes here, because yes, Nihilego is going to be able to do a lot of damage, but this Groudon, it will be able to take it and fire off a Precipice Blades, which if it connects, will most likely pick up that knockout on the Nihilego, barring something like a Focus Sash. So keeping that Pokemon safe for later is definitely the best play for Renzo, since other than the Groudon, I think the Nihilego has a pretty darn good matchup against Fevzi's Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly, and Nihilego definitely being kept safe this turn. Switching out for the Rillaboom there, setting up that grassy terrain onto the field, but Entei, feeling the pressure from that Nihilego, switches into that Cherrim. It's going to transform into its Sun mode, and Grass Knot coming out from the Whimsicott, dealing so much damage. What a great tech to have on Renzo's side of the field, as Precipice Blades lands into 2 Grass-type Pokemon that resist it, but even though they resist it, they've still taken a hell of a lot of damage in this turn from that Precipice Blades.
And that is honestly something that you have to remember about Whimsicott, is that its special attack stat isn't that bad. We spend so much time talking about Whimsicott from a support perspective that I think you forget that when it can hit a super effective Moonblast or a Grass Knot, those are 2-hit knockouts, and that's all you need in these situations to really force game positioning.
Exactly, and Cherrim just deciding to go on the defensive, as is Groudon, switching into that Entei to take a Grass Knot really, really well there. Rillaboom trying to go for the U-turn into Cherrim, but not able to pivot out that turn, and definitely giving Fevzi some advantage, being able to have that Rillaboom still on the field and still get some attacks off.
The Entei should outspeed both the Whimsicott and the Rillaboom, given that we haven't seen a Tailwind yet, and the benefit of having Cherrim next to it is that this Entei will also have a higher attack power thanks to that Flower Gift. I think the bigger question is, though, is who Fevzi targeted this turn?
Yeah, indeed, and that's definitely going to be something that going to be taken into the next game for Renzo. Knockoff coming onto the Rillaboom, revealing that Assault Vest on this Entei, and that's huge, because if it's carrying an Assault Vest, it's not carrying a Choice Scarf. But Sacred Fire coming into the Rillaboom, knocking it out in 1 hit. Definitely no surprise there, and Solar Blade coming out from that Cherrim. I'm really happy to see that. It's just such a cool animation from such a happy little flower.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've seen Solar Blade in a very long time, and that was an absolute treat.
It's so good. It's so good. It makes sense as well on this sort of team. You're assuming the sun's going to be out on the field, and Solar Blade is one of those moves that doesn't have to charge up. It's like Solar Beam but physical. So Cherub boosts itself, has the sun up because of that. Doesn't have to charge, and then can do pretty respectable damage to anything that it faces up against.
Yeah, but some really great information for both these trainers here. The Assault Vest on the Entei, knowing that the Solar Blade is an attack option on the Cherrim, are both things that these trainers need to keep in mind as we move towards, or closer towards, an end game. I think that Renzo was very smartly playing around the Choice Scarf assumed item on that Entei, but knowing that it's not there and knowing it has access to extreme speed as well, I think is really going to change his game plan for this Whimsicott in game 2.
Yeah, and I like that Sludge Bomb there going into the Cherrim as well, doing quite a bit of damage, getting that boost up, but you've got to think that Cherrim Solar Blade is going to be a lot of damage to the usually physically frail Nihilego. Here it is, it's going into that now. We'll see how much damage. Ooh! Nearly a knockout. Man, this Cherrim is being MVP right now, boosting up that extreme speed and making sure that it's going to be doing enough to put the Nihilego in range, probably for an extreme speed again.
It's definitely in range for a extreme speed. I mean, even after the grassy terrain healed it, it's still in the red, and that's usually what you look out for in that situation. I think the one thing that Fevzi has to be careful about, as Renzo is down to his last 2 Pokemon now, is this Calyrex Shadow and making sure that those Astral Barrages don't find knockouts, because if it is able to get to +2 special attack, that is going to be a huge problem for Fevzi. So the game's not over yet, even though it looks like the Nihilego will most likely be knocked out this turn by something. I think that if you're Fevzi in this situation, you know that you're going to be taking some damage immediately this turn because of the Tailwind, and you have to play around that so it's not going to be as big of a deal. And knowing that you have Umbreon in the back as well, I think you just try and slow things down, get it so that Umbreon can face off against this Shadow Calyrex 1v1, and that's the win condition you sort of move towards.
Yeah, exactly. And Grimnay not going to be getting any boosts from the Cherrim this turn as it goes for the Protect. As does the Nihilego in this situation. Extreme Speed goes into that Protect, but Calyrex going for the substitute, and that's going to be really key in this turn. I mean, you've got the Sun now ending, which means that Flower Gift damage boost is going to be leaving the field. And with that Grassy Terrain recovery, do you reckon, Gabby, that Extreme Speed is going to be enough anymore?
I don't think it is, but this is, again, great information for both these trainers. In the Invitational, Renzo ran a Calyrex Shadow that was Choice Scarfed, and with the reveal of Substitute, that's not going to be the case anymore. And that is really, again, this is key information to just keep an eye out for moving forwards. And I think that Fevzi still has to play towards that Umbreon endgame. But it's going to make it just take a few more turns. I don't think realistically that Calyrex Shadow is going to be able to take down Umbreon, but we'll have to see.
We will have to see indeed, as Helping Hand comes out there from the Cherrim. Extreme Speed going into the Nihilego with a critical hit is enough to pick up the knockout. I'm not sure if that mattered with the critical hit, and we'll see how much damage this Astral Barrage does, especially given that Entei is no longer holding its Assault Vest and is going to pick up the Cherrim. No worries on that front, but Entei is going to be able to just hang on with a sliver of its health left.
So that'll be easy for the Calyrex Shadow to knock out, though, in the next turn, since Entei will not be able to Extreme Speed it. That is a normal type attack, and Calyrex is at least partially a ghost Pokemon. I like the reveal from the Umbreon here at this point in time. If Fevzi were to send in that Groudon, he'd just be giving more Grimnay boosts to the opposing Shadow Calyrex. And really, again, given that Umbreon is your last defense here, you want to make sure that it takes as little damage as possible from these Astral Barrages.
Exactly, as Astral Barrage does go into the Umbreon and the Entei. Picking up the KO on the Entei, no surprises there, but we're going to see the Grimnay boost. That's 2 stages of increased special attack coming out there, but Umbreon going for a Snarl and being a sound-based move does ignore that substitute and removes the Grimnay boost that just came out onto the field. So Groudon being the last Pokemon for Fevzi, but not going to be a Pokemon that Fevzi really needs to close out this game. Assuming that Snarl does actually hit its mark on that Calyrex, likely going to be that Fevzi's going to take the first game home.
Yeah, you go for a Snarl here on the Umbreon, and then you protect the Groudon to ensure that Umbreon doesn't get into a situation, even if Snarl misses, where you're taking the single Pokemon attack damage from the Astral Barrage. The Protect here on Calyrex from Renzo is a little bit interesting, probably trying to ensure that if Snarl misses once, that will be all he needs for the win. But it is going to come down to Snarl and whether or not Groudon gets a double Protect, I guess, because there's really not much else Groudon does in this situation.
No, indeed, and you know, you've got to go, if you're Fevzi, you've got to go for as many win conditions as you can in a row. Groudon is going for that double Protect, doesn't quite manage it this time. Astral Barrage coming out from the Calyrex is going to be enough to knock out the Groudon this turn. Do pretty respectable damage to the Umbreon as well, but I don't know if you noticed it, Gabby, that Umbreon is about to start munching on a berry here. Bring back a bit of its HP as well, so a little bit of a nicer situation to be in. Oh no, of course it can't. Calyrex having 2 abilities, one of which being Unnerve. So Snarl does indeed hit its mark, and that is game 1 to Fevzi.
So close at the end though, because that Calyrex would have been KO'd by its own life orb had it gotten one more attack onto the field. So very, very close game 1. Very well played from both these trainers. You know, going on the offensive, really both of them from the beginning of the turns. It just really came down to the fact that Fevzi had the Flower Gift support on that Cherrim, and Solar Blade was a surprisingly fantastic attack that really gave Fevzi the damage, I would say, advantage. You know, he wasn't in a position where he was being forced to switch and sort of try and find those opportunities. Cherrim could just stay on the field and, you know, bring a Pokemon down to the red. And when you have extreme speed alongside it, that's really all you need. That was an insanely fast team preview. I was going to talk about adjustments, but why don't you let me know what you're thinking in that regard, Ben?
Well, I'm thinking the Mienshao puts a little bit more pressure onto the early game, certainly. Bringing a couple of inner focus Pokemon onto the field with that Entei Groudon taking the lead again for Fevzi. And I think this is really now a chance for Renzo to go for some early damage, and I think that's it's a little bit key. It's going to pressure the Cherrim coming in, although it's likely to want to make an appearance, especially with that Assault Vest and the Cherrim boosting special defense in the sunlight. Give either Entei or give Entei maybe the ability to take another attack. We saw its moves in the previous game, so it can also go for the Snarl. So maybe there's a little bit of a game plan there where bring in the Cherrim, get a little bit of Snarl going, break a Sash on the Mienshao, as well as take that Calyrex's special attack down and just try to bring yourself back in, because, you know, Umbreon being the main answer for Calyrex in this turn does get knocked out pretty easily from a Mienshao's close combat.
What I find super interesting as well is that there was no fake out. It was just a pure Astral Barrage, critical hit into that Groudon, bringing it down to its own invisible Focus Sash. Sacred Fire does connect with the Mienshao, who's actually holding a Focus Sash, but gets the burn to ensure the knockout. This close combat tries to bring Entei within knockout range, fails to do so, but still a great turn 1 here by Fevzi, just completely unafraid, going for the follow-up Precipice Blades. So much damage done immediately off the gate at this point. That was a complete mix-up from what I was expecting in this game too.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier something about slow play. Can't remember exactly what it was, but I think these players did that before. They're definitely not doing that now.
Oh,
so
not.
much damage coming out from both the Calyrex and the Mienshao. Would have picked up a knockout as well on that Entei if not for the burn from Sacred Fire. So, yeah, a little bit of a mix-up there. But, Gabby, what do you think that Fevzi can do? Because he looks like he's on the back foot here.
He is, and it's because the Calyrex just is able to go for Astral Barrage again, get 2 knockouts possibly, boost up its special attack by 2 stages, and start the snowball that I think everybody's come to expect from these Calyrex Shadow-centric teams. You even have the Nihilego as well, providing offensive pressure. Like, this is such a tough spot for Fevzi.
It really is, and there's not a lot of room to switch about, and definitely no switches coming out here as the Astral Barrage just goes straight into the Entei and the Groudon Protect. Entei, of course, holding that Assault Vest and not able to protect itself. So going down to the Calyrex Shadows Astral Barrage, getting that Grim Neigh boost onto the field and a little bit of damage from the Life Orb item that it's holding. Meteor Beam going into the Groudon slot is going to get the special attack boost, but isn't going to be able to pick up that knockout. And I still quite like the play there from Renzo going for that Meteor Beam. Just getting the setup now. If Fevzi switched out, would have done a significant amount of damage to, say, an Umbreon coming in. But now he's just got the special attack boost, so everything's doing damage.
Yeah, and it's almost like a safe play there, because even if you don't deal damage that turn, you're still in a position where Nihilego has to be something on top of Fevzi's mind, in addition to how terrifying this Calyrex Shadow is. Renzo just really, I think, taking what was a inopportune start for the Calyrex Shadow in game 1, realizing that he could just lead with it in game 2 and really punish this slower, like, and it's weird to call Entei Groudon slow because it's a very defensive lead as well, but it just can't compete with Calyrex Shadow without some form of speed control.
No, definitely not. And Groudon getting the double protect there will stop itself from taking any more damage this turn, as we get Astral Barrage not doing too much damage into the Umbreon, and Umbreon getting a Snarl off, so going to be able to knock out the Calyrex there. And I think this is exactly what Fevzi needed. Just reset that Nihilego, take the Calyrex on the field, keep your Groudon in play for maybe some later turns, because even though we've had some explosive turns and it looks like that Renzo was on the front foot, definitely, he's now 4 Pokemon to 2 and only has that Nihilego and Rillaboom left on the field.
Yeah, I mean, Fevzi still does have to be careful because the Groudon is still only at 1 HP, and either of these Pokemon on Renzo's side of the field will be able to knock it out. So, going to be forced to again rely on this Umbreon, but this time in a situation where it's not going to be as comfortable as it once was. I like the Snarl play because getting rid of that special attack boost on Nihilego will certainly help make this easier. But knowing that Fevzi's last Pokemon is going to be that Cherrim, you have to decide, like, do you switch out the Groudon, send in the Cherrim, maybe hope that you can get a Pollen Puff or something to try and get some health back at some point. It's a very tough spot to be in, and even though Calyrex Shadow is gone and Renzo's down to his last 2 Pokemon, he still has a very good lead momentum-wise.
Definitely so, and Cherrim is coming in for the Groudon, as you mentioned there, Gabby, getting that happy little flower on the field, and it's going to have to take a Sludge Bomb, unfortunately, for its troubles. And you can see how much the special defense boost there does impact the state of play here. Unfortunately, Cherrim getting dispatched as quickly as it arrived on the field with a Sludge Bomb and U-turn combination coming out from this Nihilego and Rillaboom, but maybe a little bit of saving grace there, the Yawn coming out from Umbreon.
I think all Fevzi needed was 1 turn in order to connect a Yawn with either of these 2 Pokemon to give himself an opening. It's still definitely going to be a tall ask because Groudon is only at 1 HP and will possibly need a double protect here if he decides to go for the sleep both on Nihilego and on Rillaboom. You know, again, Groudon is slower than both these Pokemon, so I think you have to consider it. You also have to worry about, I think, the Nihilego just deciding, okay, Groudon's probably going to protect this turn. I'll go for some big damage into this Umbreon. It's really, really close on the field, and I think it really does come down to, did Renzo make the right call here, and will Fevzi go for the double sleep?
No, well, indeed. A protect coming out from the Groudon here. And a Snarl coming out from the Umbreon. A Rillaboom knocking off the Citrus Berry from the Umbreon, just removing some of the... But a Sludge Bomb did go into that protect from the Nihilego, so Renzo's still making the choice to go on the offensive, even if Groudon is only at 1 health.
And that's okay, because Snarl is... You're gonna lose all your special attack eventually, maybe, but... You know, 1 damage is still 1 damage. I'm pretty sure the damage calculation will always round up so that you do 1 damage, regardless of the modifiers in play. And just being cognizant of that fact, I think really all Renzo has to do is keep targeting this Groudon. If his Pokemon go to sleep, then they'll eventually wake up, probably get the opportunity to attack. If Groudon fails the double protect, that's another opportunity to knock it out. And then once Groudon is gone, you can focus in on the Umbreon, who's not going to be doing too much damage to you throughout this process.
No, definitely not. And double protect there fails from the Groudon. A Sludge Bomb launches into that Groudon slot and knocks it out. Finally, the Groudon has left the field, and Beast Boost on special attack coming out from that Nihilego. A Snarl coming out from the Umbreon, though, as Rillaboom takes its first sleep turn. Will slow this game down slightly, but looking pretty difficult for this Umbreon to make any waves here. I mean, you've got Foul Play there as an opportunity to knock out the Rillaboom, and while Nihilego doesn't have the best defenses, it also doesn't have the best attack to take advantage of with this Foul Play. Yeah. So going to be really difficult for Umbreon to make any waves in this late stage of the game.
Yeah, and I also can't help but wonder, like, if the Foul Play itself is going to be a 2-hit knockout on the Rillaboom, depending on how it's been trained. It does get the opportunity to go for a U-turn, though, before that Foul Play, bringing Umbreon back down into the yellow, which will be good if that Meteor Beam connects, but Foul Play is indeed going to be a 3-hit knockout when you take into account grassy terrain recovery. So I love Umbreon so much. Seeing it paired with Groudon, they're such good partners, but when your opponent realizes that all they have to do is get it down to the Umbreon versus their not Calyrex Shadow Pokemon as a win condition, it really struggles to seal the game.
It really, really does. And, you know, it's one of those Pokemon that's so good against the Calyrex Shadow, but once the Calyrex Shadow has been knocked out, it doesn't really have too much opportunity to do too much to other Pokemon on the field. And we see a combination of the Meteor Beam launching into Umbreon, a U-turn follow-up from that Rillaboom, and it's going to be Renzo that takes game 2, and we're going to be going to a final game in the final set against these two fantastic players.
I am so excited because we've already seen some adjustments from Renzo in that game too that were really exciting. You know, the Calyrex Shadow out at the front, you know, that Mienshao. And going into game 3, I think that Fevzi is going to have to match those adjustments. I love how you play the Umbreon conservatively, but if you think your opponent is going to lead that Calyrex Shadow out the gate again, or at early doors, I believe is the British way to phrase that, I think you have to anticipate that, and you have to lead the Umbreon. Entei is a fun Pokemon. Entei certainly is great with an Assault Vest, but Umbreon just puts so much pressure onto the board against that Calyrex Shadow. Given how that game 2 played out, you can't ignore that possibility.
No, definitely not. And I think one of the things that was really important is that Renzo knocked off that Assault Vest in game 1. And one of the things that's really important in this matchup is that if Entei is holding a Choice Scarf, you really can't lead with your Calyrex Shadow, because you can just get a fire move launched into it right at the start of the game and can't really do anything. And I think that's a great adjustment that Renzo made in this match, because he identified that Calyrex was actually one of the Pokemon that could really do something right at the start of the match. But Gabby, you're absolutely right. Umbreon is here, turn 1.
Interestingly enough, though, Umbreon is standing next to the Entei, which I think is a acknowledgement from Fevzi that the Mienshao is something that you still have to be afraid of, especially given that Renzo stuck with his lead from game 2. Close combat into the Umbreon is not going to struggle to find damage. It's going to just deal a lot of damage, and you know, having the Entei on the field with Sacred Fire once again does bring the possibility to go for that knockout turn 1 like we saw in game 2. So even though Umbreon is here and is making an appearance, I don't think it's going to go on the offensive quite yet. I think you wait until you can be confident that Mienshao can't attack Umbreon. Maybe even switch in that Cherrim to just take one of those fighting type attacks for you. And make sure that the Umbreon is still around to threaten the Calyrex.
Indeed, and Calyrex definitely needs to be threatened when it's launching off these big Astral Barrages, doing pretty considerable damage to Entei, but not looking like it's gonna 2-hit KO. Mienshao is going to take a Sacred Fire, and interestingly is slower than the Entei. Close combat though, going off onto the Umbreon, doing a considerable chunk of damage, but not quite enough to pick up the knockout there, and Foul Play is going to be enough to pick up the knockout onto Mienshao there, which is pretty crucial here to keep that Umbreon on the field and keep it a big threat for Fevzi to launch into that Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Sacred Fire just proving why it is such a fantastic move. When it connects and when you get those burns, it immediately protects your Pokemon. Umbreon would have most likely been knocked out by that close combat if I had to eyeball it, if it wasn't for that burn. So being able to remove Mienshao from the field certainly does make things easier for Fevzi. That all being said, Umbreon's not out of the woods yet, as a double attack from the Nihilego plus another Astral Barrage should be enough to pick up that knockout. So Fevzi still has to be careful in how he approaches this turn. I think that you might just risk the Umbreon going down here if you can guarantee the KO on Calyrex as a result, because you don't want it to come down to your Umbreon again like we saw in Game 2 when it can't deal damage. Ooh.
No, definitely not. And a side shot there coming out from the Calyrex, targeting Entei's slightly weaker defensive stat, getting that Grim Neigh boost with the KO and taking its life orb damage. Meteor Beam coming out from that Nihilego could be enough to pick up the KO on that that Umbreon. It hasn't had any of its special attacks dropped already so far, so it does connect with the Umbreon, one of the most nerve-wracking moves to have to wait for in this game, and it is enough to pick up the KO here. Renzo taking a 2 Pokemon knockout in this turn, getting special attack boosts on both the Calyrex and the Nihilego, and the second one from that Nihilego's Beast Boost.
That is absolutely huge, because now Calyrex and Nihilego are guaranteed to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. I mean, they were before, but now it's like extra confirmed. But I think more importantly as well, without the Umbreon around, this Groudon and this Cherrim are really going to struggle to disrupt the strategy that Renzo has. Cherrim can do good damage here. You know, Groudon most likely can take an attack, an Astral Barrage at +1. So that's something that Fevzi can play around, but I think Renzo has a very simple win condition from here on out. You just have to keep on the offensive pressure, keep using Astral Barrage, keep using Sludge Bomb, maybe trying to predict some protects or what have you if you think that Fevzi is still going to play things slower. But unless Fevzi is able to find a way to deal some big damage very quickly, I think that he just can't match the threat of these 2 Titans staring the field across from him.
No, and Calyrex actually going on the defensive this turn as Fevzi goes for a Sludge Bomb into the Cherrim. Does drop it down to the Focus Sash here, and Groudon does manage to get a substitute off, and that is absolutely huge. Solar Blade, though, coming out from the Cherrim, is going to launch itself into that Nihilego, do pretty considerable damage. No grassy terrain on the field now, so not going to get close to the knockout, but definitely the more damage the better in this scenario, and that Groudon's looking pretty nice to just launch out an attack.
I am incredibly surprised that Groudon was allowed the opportunity to go for a substitute there. I think Renzo most likely anticipating a protect, not the substitute, which gives this Groudon the opportunity to land 1 attack. If he goes for Precipice Blades, he could possibly knock out both the Nihilego and Calyrex in one go. A Heat Crash would guarantee a knockout on either of these Pokemon, but only hit 1. I think you roll the dice here and see what Precipice Blades gives you. Unfortunately for Fevzi, though, there's another substitute in play.
There is indeed that Calyrex Shadow hiding behind its substitute. Groudon going for the Precipice Blades. Dice were rolled, and not quite a high enough roll there for Renzo. Both targets taking the Precipice Blades there, and Nihilego definitely going to be going back to its trainer. The Calyrex has its substitute broken, but if that's that Rillaboom in the back now for Renzo, this could be pretty much the game-ending position that he was going for with that Protect in the previous turn on the Calyrex, just to get that Rillaboom that can Grassy Glide away to its heart's content at that Groudon, and allow the +1 Astral Barrage to knock out the Groudon from the remaining HP range.
I think it is going to come down to how this Groudon is trained to a certain extent. I agree that you go for the Grassy Glide to break Substitute, Astral Barrage to knock out Cherim and deal damage to Groudon. I think the biggest question on my mind here is if Fevzi can find a position where like a Precipice Blades or a Heat Crash can happen, because he needs both attacks to happen at this point. He needs one attack to knock out the Calyrex, and then he presumably needs another attack to knock out the Rillaboom, knowing that Precipice Blades alone won't do enough. And if he can find that, he can still win, but that's just going to be so difficult.
Yeah, it is. As that Grassy Glide goes into the Groudon, definitely enough to break that substitute as Cherim fails to protect for the second time in a row. And it is the Groudon surviving there. Cherim taking, going back to its trainer. Another Grim Neigh boost coming into that Calyrex here. But I just don't see any way, Gabby, that this can go in Fevzi's favor. Both Precipice Blades do land, but as we can see, that Rillaboom is absolutely fine to take that attack. And now Grassy Glide having priority because of the grassy terrain. Fevzi's going to have to protect quite a few times in a row in order to have an opportunity for Heat Crash to launch itself into that Rillaboom.
I was going to say, I think he needs like 3 protects in a row, which isn't unheard of, especially in some of these high stakes matches. But that is definitely a tall ask as we watch Fevzi click in the forfeit. So congratulations to Renzo. That was such a fun game and such a complete mix up in styles from what we saw from them from Players Cup 4. I love watching these faster paced games, especially with Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow, because it's such a hard Pokemon to position on the field, and you have to be so careful about what attacks you allow it to take, because it can get knocked out in 1 or 2 hits. So to watch that Calyrex Shadow really have a commanding board position throughout all of Game 2 and Game 3, having been led, was certainly a treat.
Definitely it was. And sometimes you have these games with Calyrex Shadow Rider where you launch it out first, you get a bit of damage off, it goes down, and you let the other Pokemon do what they need to do, and the Calyrex has done its job because hey, everything's at 30%. But
yeah,
in other games you do the opposite. You let your team deal with the team that's in front of you until Calyrex can just come out and just clean up the game, get those Grim Neigh boost, absolutely snowball. But as you said, Gabby, seeing it in a commanding position in that game was incredible to watch, and how he managed to protect it and roll those dice on Precipice Blades, even if it didn't quite work out, just keep on strengthening his position, being able to knock out that Umbreon so much, and Calyrex stopping that Citrus Berry activating, which I think would have made a big difference if it was able to munch on that Citrus Berry to the end game. So yeah, congratulations to Renzo, congratulations to Fevzi for putting up such a great fight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing these players certainly Renzo in the later stages of the tournament, but in other tournaments as well, because they're just so great players and really good guys.
Yeah, I really want to see more of Fevzi's team as well, because like I said, that Umbreon and the Entei and the Groudon is definitely something I'm going to be keeping in mind the next time I go to team build. But that is it for today's matches here over at the World Cup, hosted by Victory Road, brought to you by Elgato. But it's not quite the end of the show, because we have an exciting giveaway to announce. Have you been, I mean, okay, Ben, so I know that you're on a team, so I feel like I'm a little hesitant to ask this question, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What is your favorite team logo from all the teams we have present in this World Cup?
It's 100% Bolivia.
That's different than what I was
no
expecting.
question whatsoever. Well, exactly. Second place to Sweden, I must admit, for Snom being one of my favorite Pokemon. But we've got a little thing here. That's the Sableye. It's the Sableye is what I love to see. If I get up now, which I'm not going to do, there's some Sableye over there. There's some Sableye over there. There's probably some back there as well. Oh yeah, and this little guy here. Yeah. It's Bolivia, 100%. It's Bolivia.
I respect that. I was expecting you to be a little bit more nationalist in your response, but I
Oh,
like
no.
that. Um, if you want to go through all of the logos, if you haven't already, there's some really fantastic art. If you let us know over on Twitter what your favorite logo is by retweeting it, you can be entered to win a Nintendo Switch console, which I gotta say, I could always use more Nintendo Switches around the house. So that
Mhm.
is an absolutely fantastic prize, and you're definitely not going to want to miss out on that.
No, definitely not. So do retweet with your favorite logo to be entered into the draw to win a Nintendo Switch. But in the meantime, we are going to call it there. We've had some great games today, and we'll be back on Friday next week with some more matches from the next stage of the tournament. So it's goodbye from me and all of us at Victory Road, and we will hopefully see you very soon for some more fantastic games of VGC.